Ethan Ward was not a hero. He was not a soldier, not a commander, not a man born for war or glory. He was simply a human engineer working far from home, assigned to a lonely research station orbiting a small, quiet star. The station was nothing special. Metal corridors, humming power lines, and long days filled with maintenance work. Ethan's life was routine. Check the systems, fix what was broken, and wait for the supply ships that came once every few months. But space had a habit of changing lives without warning. On the night it began, Ethan was alone in the control room, sipping cold coffee and staring at the screens. He had expected another uneventful shift, but then the alarms began to beep softly. His tired eyes snapped to the radar display. Something large was drifting at the edge of the system. Not a rock, not debris, it was a ship. Ethan leaned forward, adjusting the controls. The vessel's power signature was faint, almost gone. It looked badly damaged, its engines silent, its hull scarred by weapons fire. Whoever they were, they had fought hard and lost. For a moment, Ethan hesitated. The rules were clear. Report any unknown ship to Central Command and wait for instructions. But command was weeks away by signal. If he waited, the drifting ship would be gone or its crew would be dead. He muttered under his breath. If I don't act, no one will. With quick hands, Ethan launched a shuttle from the station and piloted toward the crippled ship. As he drew closer, he saw strange markings on the hull, symbols he didn't recognize flowing like silver across the blackened metal. Alien. Not just any aliens either. These were Lysari, one of the great kingdoms of the galaxy. Humans had heard of them, but few had ever met one face to face. The shuttle docked with the damaged ship. Ethan pulled on his suit and entered through a fractured airlock. The corridors inside were dark, filled with smoke and the smell of burnt metal. His boots echoed as he moved carefully, flashlight sweeping across alien architecture. Curved walls, glowing crystal panels, symbols etched in every surface. Then he heard it. A faint sound, a voice. He followed it to a chamber where a figure lay slumped against the wall. Her armor was torn, her pale silver hair tangled, her skin marked with bruises. Even in such a state, there was something regal about her. She looked young, but her eyes carried the weight of command. Ethan dropped to one knee. "Hey, can you hear me?" The woman stirred weakly. Her lips moved, but he didn't understand her words. Still, the fear in her eyes was clear. She thought he was an enemy. "I'm not here to hurt you," Ethan said gently. He removed his helmet so she could see his face. A human face. Plain, tired, but honest. Her eyes widened with surprise. "Huh, man?" she whispered, her accent heavy but clear enough. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, human, I'm here to help." He checked her wounds. She was bleeding, but not fatally. Still, she needed treatment fast. Carefully, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body trembling from exhaustion. He carried her back to the shuttle, strapped her onto a medical bed, and set the auto-medic to work. As the shuttle flew back to the station, the woman drifted in and out of consciousness. At one point, her hand brushed his arm and she whispered a name. Elira. Ethan repeated it softly. Elira. That's your name. By the time they reached the station, she was unconscious again. The next hours were tense. Ethan monitored her condition while repairing the shuttle and sending out automated distress signals. He didn't know if the Lysari would ever respond, or if they would blame him for her condition. But he knew one thing. He couldn't let her die. When Elira finally woke, she found herself in the sterile white of a human medical bay. She sat up slowly, wincing at the pain. Ethan was there, sitting nearby with tired eyes and grease still on his hands. "You're awake," he said softly. Elira studied him. "Why, help me?" she asked in broken common tongue. Ethan shrugged. "Because you needed it. That's what humans do." She tilted her head, confused but thoughtful. In her world, help was rarely given without reason. Yet here was a human who had risked himself with no promise of reward. Over the next days, Elira grew stronger. She explained little at first, only that her ship had been attacked by rivals who wanted to end her bloodline. She was not just anyone, she was Princess Elira, heir to the Lysari kingdom. Her escape ship had been meant to carry her to safety, but it had been ambushed. Ethan listened quietly. He didn't fully understand the politics of the Lysari, but he understood one thing: she was important, and someone wanted her dead. When she walked with him through the station, She looked at the simple human designs with quiet wonder. Your people. Live without crystal, without court, yet survive, she said. Ethan chuckled. We survive because we have to. Out here no one's going to save us but ourselves. She watched him closely as if trying to see what made humans different. He seemed ordinary, yet there was a strength in his calm, a fire in his eyes that she could not ignore. One evening, as a storm of charged particles swept across the system, the station's shields were pushed to their limits. Power flickered. Ethan and Aelira worked side by side to keep the systems from failing. Sparks flew, alarms blared, but together they kept the station alive. When it was finally over, they sat in the control room breathing hard. The storm raged outside, but inside there was silence. Aelira turned to him, her expression soft. You saved me twice now, she whispered. Ethan shook his head. We saved each other. That's what matters. For the first time, Aelira smiled. It was small, but it carried warmth. Ethan didn't know it yet, but that night had changed everything. Days passed slowly on the research station. The small orbiting outpost had never seen visitors like Princess Aelira before, and Ethan Ward had never been in a situation like this. At first, their interactions were careful and cautious. She spoke little, observing him as he went about his work, fixing power conduits, calibrating sensors, and making the station run smoothly. Yet, the quiet rhythm of survival created a strange companionship. Aelira moved with grace despite her injuries, her silver hair catching the pale light of the station's overhead lamps. Every so often she would reach for a control panel, her fingers brushing against the buttons instinctively. Ethan noticed her skill, impressed by the precision of her movements. It was clear she had been trained to command and act under pressure, even if her body had been weakened. You move like you know what you're doing, Ethan said one evening as he watched her try to adjust the environmental systems. I must, she replied softly. In my world, hesitation can mean death, Ethan nodded. He understood that feeling. Out in deep space, hesitation could be just as deadly. Then you'll understand why I never wait for orders. If something needs fixing, I fix it. Their conversation was interrupted by the soft hum of the station's engines, the only sound breaking the quiet tension. Aelira tilted her head, studying him with sharp eyes. Your people, you are very different. You do not serve a king. You do not fear punishment for every choice, Ethan shrugged. We survive because we choose to. There's no throne telling us what to do. You can call it freedom or stubbornness, I call it life. Aelira's eyes softened slightly. Humans were unpredictable, chaotic even, but there was a strength in their simplicity. She had spent her life surrounded by advisors, bodyguards, and strict laws. And yet here was a human who had saved her, a being who could have ignored her and yet chose otherwise. Night came in the station as it always did, though without stars to mark the passage of time. The external cameras showed the storm still raging, particles glowing across the empty darkness. Aelira and Ethan found themselves alone in the control room, working together to stabilize the station's shields. The storm was stronger than they expected. Power fluctuations caused lights to flicker, and the hum of machinery grew louder with every surge. Sparks flew from a loose panel near the main console, and Ethan swore under his breath as he moved to secure it. Careful, Aelira said, her voice low. She stepped closer, holding a small tool in her hand. Let me help. For a moment, the human and the alien worked in silence, side by side. Every movement had to be precise. A loose wire or a wrong connection could mean disaster. Ethan felt the weight of her gaze on him, not as a patient, not as a stranger, but as a partner. Finally, the storm subsided, leaving only the soft vibration of the engines. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag and leaned back in his chair, exhausted. You handled that well, Aelira said quietly. Better than most humans I have seen in battle. Ethan chuckled, a dry, tired sound. I've never fought aliens before. This was more about luck than skill. No, Aelira said firmly. Skill, judgment, and courage. All three. You have more than you realize. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The storm outside had passed, but the storm of unspoken feelings remained. Aelira had never expected to meet a human like Ethan, one who did not see her as a princess to protect or a political pawn to use. And Ethan had never expected to meet someone like her, a royal, strong, and proud, yet vulnerable enough to need help. You are strange, she said finally, a small smile touching her lips. You carry no fear of me. No fear of my people, why? Ethan looked at her, meeting her gaze steadily. Because fear changes nothing. If I waited to understand every danger, I would do nothing. You needed help. I could not help you. Alira blinked, surprised by the simplicity and honesty in his words. Humans were strange creatures, reckless. Ethan never imagined that a single night of helping someone could lead to consequences beyond his understanding. Yet, as he repaired a malfunctioning console in the station's maintenance bay, a message blinked on the screen. Encrypted. Urgent. It carried a warning from Lissari space. The princess has disappeared. She carries a secret that must be protected at all costs. Ethan froze. He knew the message was meant for someone else, likely Alira's allies, but its meaning was clear. The princess he had helped, the woman who had laughed quietly beside him in the control room, was in danger. He had to tell her. Alira was sitting near the observation deck, her legs dangling over the edge of a maintenance platform, staring at the distant stars. The storm that had raged the previous week had passed, leaving a calm darkness. Yet her mind was far from calm. I should not have left, she whispered to herself. I should have returned immediately, but her fingers brushed her abdomen reflexively. A secret she could not yet share weighed on her like a stone. Ethan approached cautiously. Alira, we need to talk, he said, his voice gentle. She looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and concern. What is it? She asked. He held up the message. This came for you. It's from your kingdom. Something about a secret and danger. Alira's eyes widened and she drew in a sharp breath. I did not know you would see this. She stood suddenly tense. It is complicated, Ethan nodded. Try me, I may be human, but I can handle complicated. For a long moment she hesitated. Then slowly she said, I'm carrying a child. An heir, but the father is human. Ethan's jaw dropped slightly. He did not speak at first. Words seemed too simple to contain the gravity of the situation. Finally he asked carefully, You mean me? Alira's silver eyes met his, filled with both fear and hope. Yes, but you must understand. This cannot be known, not yet, not until the child is safe. If the court discovers it before the time, they may try to take me or worse. The child. Ethan swallowed hard, trying to grasp the reality. He was just a human engineer. Yet now the fate of a royal child depended on him. His mind raced with questions. How would he protect her? How could he ensure her safety in a kingdom that might reject both of them? I'll help, he said finally, his voice firm. Whatever it takes. I don't know much about your politics, your people, or your throne, but I know this. You won't face it alone. Alira's expression softened. She had feared his reaction, feared he would reject her, run, or panic, but here he was, calm and steady, offering strength instead of doubt. The following days were tense. Ethan helped Alira move the station's resources into a secure section, creating a small, hidden area where she could rest and prepare. He learned quickly how to manage supplies, maintain power systems, and secure communications. Every small action built trust between them, not just as allies, but as partners in survival. Alira, in turn, taught Ethan about Lissari customs, royal protocols, and the dangerous politics he would soon face if he returned to her world. He listened intently, absorbing every detail. You must understand, she said one evening as they sat by a viewport, watching distant stars streak past. The court is divided. Some will celebrate the heir. They see it as a blessing. Others see it as a curse. They will not accept a human father. Ethan frowned. And the king? Your father? Alira's gaze dropped. He is strict. Wise, yes, but traditions mean more to him than anything. He may never forgive this. Yet I must hope. The child must live. Ethan's hands clenched unconsciously. Then we'll make sure the child does live. And we'll make sure you survive too. I don't care what they say. You're not alone in this. Alira felt a small spark of hope. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but perhaps unpredictability could be an advantage. She had been trained to think in logic and rules. But logic alone could not save her. Only courage, and perhaps a human's courage, could see them through. Trouble arrived faster than they expected. The encrypted message had been traced. A Lissari scout ship approached the station, moving silently through the void. Ethan spotted it first. Its sleek hull and insignia marked it as royal, but the movement was cautious, almost threatening. They know I am here, Alira whispered. standing beside Ethan at the observation deck. Her hands rested lightly on his arm. "They are coming for me." "And they may not understand the situation." Ethan's mind raced. "We won't let them take you. We'll explain, or we'll defend if we must, but you are not going back there alone." The scout ship fired a signal, a request to dock, standard protocol. Ethan and Elira prepared for a tense meeting. They could not know the intentions of the crew inside, whether they were loyalists trying to help or agents of the faction that would see the Heir destroyed. When the docking clamps clicked, the airlock hissed and a group of Lissari guards entered, led by a tall officer with an unreadable expression. Elira stepped forward, confident but cautious. "Princess," the officer said formally, "you are to return immediately. The king demands it." "I cannot," Elira replied firmly. "Not yet. I must prepare. My child's life comes first." The officer's eyes narrowed. "This is highly irregular. You are defying royal orders." Ethan stepped forward, surprising even himself. "She's not defying orders. She's protecting a life, and I won't let anyone threaten her." The room fell silent. The Lysari guards were trained for obedience and power. A human speaking with such authority was unexpected. The officer studied him, then stepped back. "Perhaps there is wisdom in caution, but this does not end here. The court will demand answers." Elira exhaled quietly, relief mixed with tension. "We have a small window," she said. "We must be ready for what comes next. The court will not remain idle for long." Ethan nodded. "Then we prepare. Together." In the following days, they fortified the station's hidden areas, tested communication jammers, and created contingency plans. Every action strengthened their bond. They spoke of hopes and fears, of worlds beyond the stars, and of what it meant to be human or Lissari. Elira revealed the first hints of her feelings for Ethan, small gestures, soft words, moments of trust. Ethan, in turn, began to see the extraordinary in himself, a human, capable of courage, loyalty, and love, whose choices could influence the fate of a princess and her unborn heir. One night, as the station floated silently through the void, Elira looked at him with quiet determination. "You are human, and yet you are unlike any I have known. Perhaps this child will inherit more than just Lissari blood. Perhaps it will inherit courage and heart, like yours." Ethan's chest tightened. He had never thought of himself as exceptional. But here, in the loneliness of space with an alien princess depending on him, he realized that humanity, ordinary, stubborn, brave humanity, could stand against anything, and he would. News traveled faster than Elira expected. Even though she and Ethan had hidden in the isolated research station, whispers from Lissari space began reaching her. Traders, scouts, and diplomatic channels carried fragmented rumors. The princess was hiding. She was carrying an heir and a human. An outsider was involved. The Lissari kingdom was thrown into chaos. In the Grand Palace, advisors argued in raised voices. Nobles split into factions, some declaring the heir a miraculous sign of a new era, others calling it a disgrace that threatened tradition. The king, stern and proud, sat in silence, his silver hair gleaming under the palace lights. He had yet to see the child or the human involved, but the news alone struck at the heart of centuries of custom. Meanwhile, aboard the station, Elira paced nervously. Ethan watched her from across the room, repairing a power module. "They are reacting faster than I expected," she murmured. "The factions in the court, they will not wait for explanations. Some will act immediately." Ethan set down his tools. "Then we don't wait either. We prepare. We protect the child. That's all that matters." Elira stopped pacing and looked at him. "You do not understand. In my world, rules are more powerful than life. Some will kill to preserve tradition." Ethan frowned. "Then we'll make them reconsider. One way or another." Back in the Lissari court, rival nobles schemed openly. They claimed the princess had broken sacred law, that a human father could not produce a rightful heir. Some whispered of assassination plots. Others planned to challenge her claim to the throne as soon as she returned. The kingdom's stability was at risk. Even allies of the princess argued over strategy. Should she be brought home immediately, hidden in a palace ward? Or should the heir be quietly removed? Every choice seemed dangerous, every delay risky. Meanwhile, Elira's absence left a vacuum. Many Lysari people were loyal. But loyalty was tested when traditions were challenged. Soldiers and advisors demanded orders from the king. The king remained silent, his expression unreadable. Yet in his heart he worried. Not for the law, not for the traditions, but for his daughter. Back on the station, Ethan had grown more confident in his skills. He repaired communication systems to avoid detection, reinforced security protocols, and ensured the hidden area where Heir stayed was safe from scans. Every day he tested emergency systems, ran simulations of possible attacks, and devised ways to escape should Lysari forces come in force. "You are relentless," Heir said one evening, watching him. Her voice was soft, tinged with admiration. "Most humans would panic under pressure. You do not." Ethan paused, looking at her. "I've survived long enough in space to know panic won't help. And I can't panic when—" Ethan had never expected to face a royal court, let alone one from an alien kingdom with centuries of strict tradition. Yet here he was, standing in the Lysari throne room, a human in simple clothing among towering aliens clad in ceremonial armor. The air was thick with tension. Nobles whispered behind their hands, their eyes sharp and suspicious. Heir stood beside him, calm but alert, her silver hair gleaming under the hall's lights. She had returned to her kingdom not by choice, but because the factions within the court were growing bolder. Some wished her harm, others demanded answers, and all demanded action. The king's voice rang out, deep and commanding. "You have brought a human into the royal court, princess." "Explain yourself," Heir stepped forward. "Father, this human, Ethan, did not come as a threat. He saved my life. He saved me when my ship was attacked, when I had nowhere else to go. He has protected me and the child I carry. That is why he is here." A murmur ran through the court. Some nobles gasped, others frowned. A human father? In Lysari history, no outsider had ever been considered part of the royal line. The king studied Ethan carefully. "And you, human? What claim do you have here?" Ethan swallowed but held his gaze steady. "None, your majesty. I am not here to claim power, nor to challenge the throne. I am here to protect the princess and her unborn child. That is all. I will not stand by while anyone threatens them, even if it means facing your court, the nobles, or anyone who doubts me." The room was silent. Few had expected the human to speak with such confidence, let alone such courage. One of the senior nobles stepped forward, voice sharp. "And yet, your highness, a human father is unacceptable. He cannot inherit the throne, and his presence taints the line." Heir's eyes flashed. "My child's life is not tainted by the father's species. The child carries my bloodline, my family, and will inherit the throne by right. Ethan has proven his loyalty and courage. That is more than most have done in generations." Another noble scoffed. "Loyalty to the princess does not mean loyalty to the kingdom. Do you forget our laws? Do you ignore tradition?" Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Tradition is important, yes, but courage, loyalty, and honor are greater. If your laws allow harm to an innocent, to a child, then your tradition is flawed. I do not seek power, but I will not let injustice happen. I am human, yes, but that does not mean I am weak." Whispers spread through the court. Many were stunned at the human's boldness. Others were skeptical. Some were outraged. The king's eyes, sharp and unyielding, softened slightly as he watched Ethan. He had seen countless humans, most weak, many reckless. Few displayed bravery that could rival even his most loyal Lysari guards. And here was one standing tall, unafraid of the court's scrutiny, ready to defend life itself. "Enough," the king said finally, his voice commanding silence. "I will hear no more arguments until I have considered what has been said. Ethan, you have shown courage and loyalty beyond what I expected of your kind. That alone will not determine the future, but it will earn my consideration." Heir exhaled quietly, relief mingling with tension. She knew the battle was far from over, but this was a start. Over the next days, Ethan proved himself further. He accompanied Heir on walks through the palace gardens, ensuring her safety. He trained quietly, learning the basics of Lysari combat and defense from trusted guards. He worked tirelessly to understand the palace systems and communication networks, helping to fortify Heir's private chambers. Every action impressed the king's advisors and even some of the nobles. They began to see that the human was not just a fragile outsider. He was quick-thinking, loyal, and brave, a being who could stand against threats without hesitation. One day, a group of rival nobles attempted to approach Heir's chambers under the guise of diplomacy. Ethan intercepted them in the hall. Step back, he said calmly but firmly. You will not enter without permission, the nobles sneered. And who will stop us, you? Ethan smiled faintly, confident. Yes, me, I will protect the princess, and I will do whatever it takes. The confrontation ended without violence. But the message was clear. A human now stood tall among the Lysari, and even those who doubted him would think twice before acting. That evening, Elira and Ethan sat in the observation deck overlooking the palace courtyard. The city below shimmered with lights, elegant and alien. You have changed everything, Elira said quietly. Your presence, your courage. It has given hope to those who would have been afraid to act. Ethan shook his head. I didn't come here to change kingdoms. I came here to protect you, but I suppose hope comes along with it. Elira looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the lights below. Humans are unpredictable, reckless, yet you stand tall when others falter. That is why I trust you. That is why my child's life depends on you as much as mine. Ethan's chest tightened. He had never imagined that a human, an ordinary human, could have such influence. But standing beside her, he realized that courage and loyalty were universal languages. They crossed species, kingdoms, and tradition. The next challenge arrived swiftly. A faction within the court, unwilling to accept the human's presence, attempted a subtle coup. They planned to isolate Elira in a remote palace wing and seize control of the throne in her absence. Ethan learned of the plot through the palace guards loyal to the king. Without hesitation, he acted. Moving quickly, he coordinated with the guards to secure Elira's chambers and prevent the coup. Every step was precise, every decision measured. For hours he navigated palace corridors, outsmarting those who had underestimated him simply because he was human. By dawn, the plot was thwarted. The conspirators were detained, and the court witnessed a human, not a soldier, not a royal, defend the princess and the kingdom itself. The king, observing from his throne, finally spoke. Ethan, you have shown that courage and loyalty are not confined to Lysari blood. You have stood where others would have fled. For that you are acknowledged in this court. Elira stepped forward, her hand brushing Ethan's arm. You see? I told you. Humans are not weak. They are capable of greatness. Ethan smiled faintly. Exhaustion in his bones, but pride in his heart. I'm just a human. But maybe being human is enough. The court fell silent. Even those who had doubted him now recognized that this human had changed the rules. Not by force, but by courage, loyalty, and unwavering resolve. That night, Elira and Ethan stood on the palace balcony looking out over the city. The stars above were bright and the lights of the Lysari capital shimmered like a sea of silver. You have proven yourself, Elira said softly. Not just to me, but to the kingdom, perhaps. One day they will see that a human can be more than they ever imagined. Ethan took her hand gently. It doesn't matter if they see it now. What matters is that we survive, that your child is safe, and that we stand together. That is enough. Elira leaned slightly against him, comforted by his presence. Together they had faced a kingdom's scrutiny and emerged stronger. Together they would face whatever came next. Outside, the stars remained constant, indifferent to the dramas of life below. Inside, a human had stood tall in the face of tradition, fear, and politics. And the Lysari, and perhaps the galaxy, would never see him the same way again. The Lysari kingdom was finally beginning to settle. Weeks of turmoil had passed, and the court, though still tense, had accepted that the princess and her human companion were not to be trifled with. Ethan Ward, a simple human engineer, had become something extraordinary, not by birthright, not by title, but through courage, loyalty, and an unwavering determination to protect life. Elira stood in the palace garden, her silver hair catching the morning light. The city outside sparkled like a jewel, but she paid little attention to it. Her mind was on the child she carried, the heir who would unite two worlds, two peoples in ways no one could yet imagine. Ethan approached quietly, carrying a small basket of fruit. He offered it to her with a gentle smile. You should eat. It's been a long few days. Elira accepted the fruit, her expression softening. You have done more than anyone could ask, she said. Not just for me, for the kingdom, for the future. Ethan shook his head. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Because you and the child matter. Her eyes met his, filled with gratitude and something deeper, something that made her pulse quicken. And yet the kingdom respects you now. Perhaps even more than some of my own guards. He smiled faintly. I'm still just human. But maybe that's enough. The court was not fully calm, but it had learned a lesson that would resonate for generations. Courage, loyalty, and honor were not confined to bloodlines or species. The factions that had plotted against Aelira had been exposed, and many of the nobles had learned that underestimating a human could be dangerous. The king, once skeptical of Ethan, had come to respect him. He had seen firsthand how Ethan navigated threats, protected the princess, and even prevented a coup. It was rare for Lysari rulers to acknowledge outsiders so openly, yet the king had done so. Ethan Ward, he had said in a private audience, your courage has saved my daughter and the child she carries. You have earned our respect. You may not be Lysari, but you are a protector of life, and that is a title worth more than many. Ethan had bowed respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty. I am honored, but my duty is not done. I will continue to hem, Nomadi,